Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us here today. I'm Skyline, a member of the customer experience team at Linear. Today, we're going to talk about how marketing teams can use Linear not only to manage workflows, but also to collaborate more effectively with other teams. To show us how it's done, we have Ali McDerment and Eric Dodds joining us from Rudderstack. Those of you who are not familiar with Rudderstack, they're a software company that empowers businesses to control and leverage their customer data. I'll let each of our guests introduce themselves, starting with Ali. Then we'll pass the mic to Eric and also Sagan, who's joining us from Linear's product team, but also a former Rudderstack employee.
Great. Thank you, Skyline. I'm Ali. I'm the Rudderstack marketing team project manager. So I have been with Rudderstack for 3 years now, and it has been about a year since we migrated from Asana to Linear. So that's just a little bit of our project management background. Okay, Dodds?
How's it going? I'm Eric Dodds, and I currently work on the product team at Rudderstack, but managed a lot of our marketing stuff previously, and have done a lot of project management over the years, and have worked very closely with Ali on that, both on the marketing side and then now bridging the gap between product and marketing. So excited to share. Sagan.
Cool. Hey, everybody. I'm Sagan. I'm on the product team here at Linear. And as Skyline alluded to, I was previously the head of product at Rudderstack. So it's nice to be in company with Eric and Ali once again for this event.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, everyone. I think it's pretty unique hosting an event with a former customer turned colleague along with a team that they used to work with. So I think this one's a special one. So today, while our focus is specifically on marketing workflows, I kind of want to pull back a little and get a quick summary on Rudderstack as a whole and their migration to Linear.
So Sagan, I think, really headed our migration. Would you agree, Sagan? You were kind of the one who took us over. Yep.
Yeah, I was the champion, so to speak. I'm happy to kind of give the quick overview there. So the short answer is, at the time we had roughly 120 or 130 people sort of across EPD generally, pretty large engineering org. And fully remote company. And so I think we had one of these sort of typical setups that a lot of remote companies face is just, different types of personas on the teams, working different tools. And so a big effort for us was to sort of bring a lot of the communication and the clarity and, visibility for the work that was being done under kind of one place. And hopefully with the goal of minimizing some of the things that happen where you have different, roles on the team that are sort of doing these handoff things like, you go from where the work is, where code is being pushed to then saying like, cool, now you guys take it from here and then like so on. And so every opportunity or every one of those jumps you make, there's an opportunity for things to fall through the cracks, or you're forced to rely a little bit more on communication, which generally becomes slack and that sort of thing. So the goal is really to kind of just bring everybody under one house and see if we could streamline some of the operations around the full sort of end-to-end process from, idea of something to it getting built to actually taking it to market and having it go to customers. That was the main effort.
Did you migrate from Asana all at once or team by team?
For the marketing team, it was all at once, if that's what you're asking. And then, so within the marketing team, we had our product marketing team, demand generation, web presence, design, and field, and partner marketing. So all of those groups moved at one time.
Oh, wow. Yeah. How long was the migration for the marketing team?
Well, I spent a lot of time doing cleanup because I didn't want to move junk. And so I spent some time cleaning first. I would say it took probably like about a week. And then we did some training directly with Linear. Like the Linear team helped the marketing team do like a little session. I did sessions with each individual group. So it kind of took, all told, maybe I would say a month for everybody to be like fully up and running.
And then narrowing it down, what provoked the marketing team's decision to go from Asana to Linear?
Yeah, I can start out there. I think in terms of specific pain points, one of the challenges of working in separate tools was that there were a couple of specific pain points. One was just visibility, and it sounds so simple, but just finding stuff. So Sagan talked about going from idea to actually the public-facing launch materials or go-to-market aspects of that. And the context that is created from the ideation phase. So that's the documentation, maybe it's PRDs, maybe it's a collection of calls with customers that are recorded or notes or transcripts. That's so important for the go-to-market side. But since things were happening in different places, it was really hard for us on the go-to-market side to go find that because, okay, well, part of it's in this tool or part of it's in that tool, et cetera. And then on the flip side, with Sagan and the product team is like for them to get visibility into, well, what's the plan on the go-to-market side? Again, it was difficult for them to go find that information. And so what ended up happening is you just create a ton of extra work for everyone, right? So it's like, okay, well, we have to summarize this from this tool, right? Well, the information already exists, but you're like summarizing it, extracting it, summarizing it, et cetera, right? And then you end up using some middleman tool, like a document or Google Sheets to like take information from these different places and have this monumental effort to try to create central visibility. And so that ultimately meant we were just really slow because people were doing all this extra work to like combine information that already existed. And so we wanted to really move towards operating like a product-led company. And so Sagan wanted to make the best decision for efficiency on the product side. And then we wanted to reframe the way that we thought about go-to-market as an extension of the product process, as opposed to this is separate. And so for us, it was just a no-brainer. We think about marketing going closer to product. And so that's why we made the move to linear on the marketing side.
Tell me more about that mindset shift you were talking about. Like, what were some of the challenges during that time?
I think it was, I think at some point every organization sort of faces this when they're scaling and going from like a more 0 to 1 team to, having to think more about end-to-end launch process all the way to like getting to customers, right? And I think part of what was happening is you'd find some of these like silos going on where it was sort of like, okay, this eng team did this thing. Now it's like off our plate and now like someone else takes it. I went on a pretty long crusade about trying to break as many silos as I possibly could. And I think silos are good, right? Like there's really good reason to have small teams that work on things that's kind of like set aside where there's, no distraction, that sort of thing. But I think the phase of the company or the cycle, like where we were, it was really sort of like we needed to sort of break out of that in some sense at that time as we were growing and all that sort of stuff. And so I think that mind shift was really just like trying to get teams to see sort of a bigger picture and understand where their value came in that thing. And then also understanding that like, if they could see a bigger picture around it, that's beneficial to everybody. And it was more of like okay, now the team is not the silo team where you get the one thing done. It's like, how can we support this whole process and think about the process to Eric's point? Just because code gets pushed doesn't mean like that's where the product ends, and or that's where the project ends. And now maybe the project is run more by the go-to-market side or whatnot. So I think part of it was just breaking silos and sort of, trying to get people to think about maybe bigger picture and how stuff that they're not directly involved in on the project, but it is still very relevant, how they can set that up for it to be better or easier or, whatever for their teammates, basically. So framing it like that helps, in my opinion.
I like the term breaking silos. I think I might suggest that to our sales team. Devin would like to know, like, currently their engineering team's on linear and they love it. And they're trying to get their marketing team to switch from Asana next. How do they sell them on linear? And what are your favorite features that made the switch easy?
We're just very, very focused on being in the same workspace with the rest of the team. That was our number one goal. Wouldn't you say, Dodds? That was the main reason we were doing everything.
Yep. Yeah, I would say it's a mindset shift, Skyline, like we were talking about. It's just so important for us to create visibility and velocity going from product idea to go to market. And the initial pushback that I think that a lot of people have, and that we even discussed with a lot of people on the marketing team, is like, oh, there's this thing in Asana that I really like. I think that's the dealing with those individual issues. I mean, sure, it's important, right? Figure out how to map like different workflows and stuff like that. Ali and I did a lot of that. But if that's the main focus, it's the wrong question, right? Because it's without a doubt, our workflows are way more efficient and linear than they were in Asana. I don't think that's just a workflow mapping question. The bigger thing is, do you want to create that end-to-end continuity between product, from idea to launch? And that was the number one thing for us. If you get alignment on that, then the workflow mapping is actually just going through a checklist, right? Like, how do you map this workflow? And Ali did a great job of that. And in many ways, like, it forced us to fix some broken processes that we had needed to fix for a long time, which was great.
We also haven't had anyone who's joined the marketing team since we've migrated who's like, oh, I wish we were on something else. I think sometimes when you just are used to something, it's hard to change no matter what it is.
There's a really good comment from Nick in the chat here saying linear has guardrails, Asana easily becomes a wild, wild west. To give some other context, when we migrated the EPD org, we migrated off of Notion, and which is like the most customizable thing on the planet, right? And there's, again, benefit to that, but also linear having some view or perspective on how, workflow should go, or having the opinion, it sort of prevents what can turn into chaos. And at that point, like nothing, it's not working for anyone, right? Like when people are able to recreate every workflow in their version, it only works for them. And so I think that's a big pull, is like, we give you some guardrails, we have an opinion on how this stuff should be done, we give you some flexibility with it, and generally that it takes away a lot of like the additional thinking about how to do the process. And so it's just like, here's a good way to do it, like try this. And generally that works pretty well for people.
How do you respond to claims that linear is a technical tool designed for engineers? I've heard this a few times, and I don't personally believe it at all, even though linear has great support for GitHub. Thanks, Adam.
This may sound kind of like a direct answer, but I think it just depends on your values as a company. Like, we really wanted to be product driven, and we're a software company. And so for us, like, number one, I would say, I guess actually, to make this concise, if someone says this is a technical tool designed for engineers, you should just have them go use it, because Allie is not an engineer by any stretch of the imagination. But we jumped into linear from Asana, and I was like, this has so many nice, it's just so nice. And so that alone, I think, just use it is the main answer, I would say, because it's just not true. And if someone uses it and then walks away with that, perspective, then I don't know. I don't have to tell you. I would say what most people think when they come over from marketing is that linear is a fairly opinionated tool. And they describe that in different ways, but that's really what they're describing. And in my personal opinion, it just forces you to make better decisions about things that you do really bad in other tools. Like, there's so many hacks that we implemented in Asana to make things work. And linear just doesn't let you do some of the really bad habit stuff that a lot of other tools let you do. Mm-hmm. That's like different for a lot of people. And so they may describe it like, oh, this is a tool for engineers, but in fact, it's just opinionated and generally like forces you to make the best decision, is what I found. I don't know, Allie, thoughts?
I agree. One of the opinionated things I like is how it just will straight up cancel an issue if it hasn't been touched in a long time. And then all of a sudden it's in your face, like, we canceled this one. And you're like, oh, do I want it canceled? It like, it forces you to think about stuff. It doesn't let you just be lazy,
I think, too, on a philosophical level, to say something is a tool for engineers is a stereotype in that, like, engineering tools are difficult to use, which, engineers also deserve great design.
Yeah, for sure.
We have a lot of customers who's wanting to know, how do you stay on top of product launches, which, are inclined to change a lot, and what mechanisms you've implemented to stay up to date to, like, feature changes and launch dates.
Yes. Well, now that I moved to the product side, Sagan and I are looking at each other and smiling, because, I was on the receiving end of product changes, and now I'm providing those to the go-to-market organization. There are a couple of thoughts that I have. So one is, there are tactical things you can do, but those work best when you frame go-to-market as an extension of the product process, if that makes sense. And to go into a little bit more detail there, a lot of times you go through product development. So there's ideation, there's some sort of planning, PRD. You start executing the product. There's designs being created. People are writing code, and then at some point, there's some stable release that someone can use, and that could be beta or whatever terminology you use inside your company. And before we migrated everything into linear, that was a handoff, right? So then product would sort of say, okay, here's this thing that someone can use. And that was when we had to do all that extra work. And so when we moved to linear, the biggest thing was actually just continuing the project. You have linear projects, right? And so let's say we're shipping feature X. And so previously in the previous process, it'd be like, okay, whatever tool the product team's using, they sort of close that out and it's like, great, here we go. And so now we work in a process where there are statuses, and sure, like there's a stable code release and it's usable, but the project is not complete then. And so one of the very tactical things we do is use statuses in linear for things like post-release validation if we need to get customer feedback, product launch statuses. And so these are the things where the product manager is providing the customer success team or the go-to-market team or both with the things that they need. And then ultimately at some point, actually the go-to-market team is sort of driving it from there. And so it actually just all happens as part of the same process. And that was a mindset shift, I think, on both sides, where like the project isn't done until it reaches some threshold. And that's different for different projects and different, companies. But
Umar has a question. What is Rudderstack's marketing workflow for product releases?
Great question. So it depends on the feature. So I mentioned before, some of these things are big, some of them are small, some may just need a release note, some of them need only CS enablement, some need sales enablement. But no matter the flow, generally we'll use statuses to represent the major the flow of the life cycle of a release, right? And so you have statuses that relate to like planning, or the ideation phase. And then something that's in progress is actively being worked on. We have a post-release validation status, and that is actually in between, something being a stable code release and then early customers using it and us getting feedback, which is super important. So we kind of use that as a refinement before a full, the full launch or the full release to like a wider group, in beta, et cetera. Then we have a product launch status, and the product launch status is where, depending on the, size of the feature, there are different requirements around that, and we can use milestones for those, which is really nice. So if it's a big one, there are probably like multiple GTM milestones. So there may be like an enablement milestone, there may be like a GTM content milestone, and other pieces related to like a big feature launch. So it'll stay in the product launch status for a longer period of time as it works through those project milestones related to launch. For smaller ones, it may just be that we need a release note. In those cases, generally like the product manager or engineering manager will draft a release note, and then there's an exchange in linear on that issue, or maybe even a review sub-issue for someone on the go-to-market side on product marketing. And then, they'll take that and publish it. So that's a quick overview.
And actually, to add on to the cross-functional collaboration, one of the biggest bottlenecks marketing teams can have is to product marketing can be the sales team. And so how does the product marketing team solve that go-to-market interlock with linear in sales?
I think at every software company, you have this question of how do you create a happy path internally from product idea to the sales team is equipped, is equipped to actually talk with prospects or customers about this. We're a very technical product. And so that's actually particularly tricky for us, especially as we're rolling out very technical features, right? So things around like warehouse cost optimization. Even if you're pretty technical, that can get really down in the weeds. So there are a couple things I would say. One is that there are different types of service that need to be provided to sales. So one could just be, they need to know when a feature is ready, or a prospect or a customer is asking about this, right? And Linear just has some really nice ways to handle that, where you can push project updates into Slack channels, and you can make sure that people are aware. And so you can actually handle a lot of that asynchronously, which is really nice. The other side is enablement, and that actually goes back to what we were talking about before, where if there's an enablement requirement, there are things that sales may be really interested in that customer success isn't quite as interested in, and the other way around, right? So there may be some major feature that we're augmenting to work in a way that satisfies a major customer need, but isn't really something that a salesperson is going to highlight. But for our CS team, it's like, this is huge.
Mhm.
But we just define those enablement requirements as part of the project as a whole.
Yep. And then, I mean, we templatize that. So now it's just required for all big projects going forward. Enablement is going to be a part of them.
Are you using initiatives for any bigger cross-functional work?
Yeah, actually, do you want me to, I can share my screen and show you this because it's probably a little bit easier to explain. This is going to make Sagan smile. Okay. Okay, so we use initiatives in two ways. So one of them is probably slightly outside of the standard way, but we have what we call product groups that are groupings of features within a certain functionality. So we have a platform and it has really different functionality in different pieces of the platform. And so we have initiatives for each of those major areas of functionality. And so I'll just quickly show you. So this is collect. This deals with, really anything related to data collection, the governance of that data, how you transform it, load it, all that sort of stuff. And so we create visibility in what is happening for this product group by grouping that into an initiative. So you can see here are the in progress projects for our collect product group. This is comprised of a couple of different teams that work on very different code bases, but they all relate to the same functionality. And so anyone in the company can go in and see what we're working on, the status. Here you can see these are the weekly status updates that are going out. And then we also have weekly meeting notes. So I'll show you this really quick. In our product group weekly meetings, we have notes. Again, anyone in Linear in the company can go look at that. So that's really helpful for creating visibility on a product group level. And then we also have major cross-functional projects that span multiple different teams and tend to be much larger projects. We only have a couple of those going on at a time. And so you can see those. This design resourcing, we're actually moving to a different view, but it's something we use right now. We want to clean up the initiatives view. So that's how we create visibility. What's really nice about that is, I'll just give you a random example, but let's say like one of our executives is going to meet with a big customer, right? Because they're at an event. They can actually go into one of those initiative views and look at all the recent updates, look at the in progress projects, and like get a really good overview of what's going on. So it serves that audience well. But then the customer success team, for example, they may have multiple customers asking them on a weekly basis, when is this thing going to be ready or released? And so they can go in there and get updates as well. All the updates are also posted to Slack channels. And so that's a quick overview of how we use initiatives. So sort of like global visibility on certain things that are going to be stable but are important to have a global view of, and then also major cross-functional efforts that are across team, project dependent, all that sort of stuff. We have started doing required weekly Linear updates, like for all the projects, which is awesome. And so really anyone can go into the Slack channels and subscribe there. And so when we do meetings now on major projects, especially related to the product, they're getting more and more efficient because a lot of that happens async. And we just use Linear's update feature, and that pushes the Slack channels, and you can have a great discussion within that feature, and it syncs to the Slack thread, and it's very nice. And so we're pushing a lot of that to async so that people are just sort of consuming information and updates for the projects that are important to them or that they're a stakeholder in. And then we sort of discuss any blockers or important things in meetings, as opposed to like giving a synchronous status update where the information is new.
Do all teams work in cycles?
Not yet, but that's the goal. I love capacity planning. So the idea that we can say this cycle is full, we cannot take on this extra project, or yes, we can help you with this, but we will need to sacrifice something else. When the capacity is like the data that can speak for itself, then it's easier to take last minute requests because you are able to bargain or at least make a more informed decision if you're using that.
One other note on cycles is that on the marketing side, generally your ability to ship stuff It can be very dependent on like web and design resources, if it's anything digital or their graphics. And so in many ways, planning around the cycles, we call it the web presence team, planning around their cycles is actually way better for the entire company, even though you have to put more work into the planning. Linear obviously makes that way easier.
Yeah.
But if we run really tight cycles there, then it creates a lot of transparency on like, is there capacity to get this thing done, or do you need to reprioritize?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really aligning cycles around the resources that tend to be the biggest bottleneck. And cycles are a great way to sort of force alignment on that.
And now with other marketing workflows, popular one being the marketing calendar, and also, Ali, you mentioned using Linear's triage function for marketing requests. I'd love to touch base on how you guys utilize those tools.
Yeah, I know a calendar, everybody loves to talk about a calendar. And I know Linear is not planning to do a calendar anytime soon. Totally fine. We can live without it, right? So specifically, I think for our team, an area where a calendar has been helpful in the past, but we're working around it, is our blog. Every big launch we do, we'll have a blog post announcing it, but we'll also have, so that's like related to the product side, but we also have a thought leadership blog post from time to time, or a press release blog post, lots of different kinds. And so the way that our content marketing team is able to keep an eye on everything is using views. So individual blog posts can live in 1,000 different projects. They could be a part of a launch. They could be a part of something else. But using a label and a view allows us to keep a singular focus on all of them in one single place. So that's sort of a way that we are able to not need the calendar as bad. And then what was your second question, Skyline? You mentioned the calendar. What was the other one? Oh, triage?
Triage function, for marketing requests. Yeah.
So triage is used primarily by our web presence team. That's basically like our graphic designer, our UX designer, that type of group. And so anytime a request comes in, usually via Slack for like, there's a typo on this page, they will use triage to make sure that that's tracked and that it's on their radar, but it doesn't interrupt their workflow or it doesn't mess up their cycle that they're in. And then every time we do cycle planning, we go through triage, see what's in there, see what needs to be pulled into the cycle or the next cycle, or what can be pushed out a little bit.
And actually, I had a quick question about the calendar. You said you use views and labels. What kind of labels are you using?
Related to the content type. So specifically, blog is the one that's most helpful, but we also have one for maybe like a social media post, all different types of content.
Gotcha. Is the view usually organized by like the swim lanes or?
Yes, and where they are. So like a planned out blog post, something in progress, something that's blocked because we're waiting on product to see if it's ready. Y'all know how it goes.
Hypothetically, not that that ever happens.
Yes, that's an example.
The beauty of that though is the PM team can also see that view, and it's in the same tool in the same place, and they can be assigned things, and there's very clear communication.
Yeah. One note on that, just to make a point there, and there are actually two ways to do this, and it just depends on your preferred workflow. The label flow is one way where you can set a organization level label, which is what we have, and so you can create a view based on that label. So for all the blog posts, you could also do that with a team, right? So you could have a content team, and so issues could live with the content team, but the team can be part of a bunch of different projects, right? So either way you want to do it, depending on your use case. But the thing that is so nice about that these objects have a very flexible hierarchical relationship, is that there isn't a, like, if I want to go look at what's on the calendar, like I can do that, but you don't lose visibility for the product team, right? And so the product manager, like the blog post is part of the project for the feature that they are releasing. And their requirements for the product manager, they need to give inputs to the GTM team, provide, whatever, to the GTM team in order to actually do the blog post. And so that level of accountability is really nice on the project level, or even if it's a release note for just an individual issue that we're picking off, like, oh, that's a great thought from a customer. Let's just do that. We need to do a little release note that can live where the EPD org is working, but we also have a global view. And that is just so incredibly nice because it keeps accountability on a very localized level, but you have so many options for visibility on a global level, which is really nice.
Side question. Are there any integrations you've discovered that particularly work well for marketing use cases?
You can
Mhm.
push stuff to Google Calendar, which is great to create like a calendar format view. And then, I mean, the Slack integration, it kind of goes without saying, but like for intake with linear asks and going to triage is awesome because usually, there's some sort of like form workflow you're using. That's really great. But then also pushing updates to Slack channels is just so nice, right? Because I mean, linear it's actually, I mean, we have created a number of views and everything that have like very wide visibility across the organization, but not everyone in the company needs to go into linear every day, right? Especially if you think about things like, certain executives who just aren't going to they're not going to log into linear because they don't need that level of granularity, but they do have a vested interest in certain key projects or whatever. And so to push those updates into Slack is really nice.
I think that's it for today. Let's give a big thank you to our guests, Ali and Eric. And thank you, Sagan, for joining us from our product team. I appreciate y'all being here and sharing some rich insights with us. And thanks for all who's tuning in today. If you have any further questions or your own tips, make sure to share it in our Slack community.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.